Well, that's lame. You guys willing to do a round 2 with me? Well, if you were just watching, I got cut off like in the middle of my live stream. So here we are again. So, Exodus chapter 4, verses 21 to 23. And the Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you do all these wonders before Pharaoh, which I have put in your hand, but I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. And you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my son, my firstborn. So I say to you, let my son go that he may serve me. But if you refuse, let him go. Indeed, I will kill your son, your firstborn. Do me a favor, guys. If you just hopped in, invite all those other people who are just watching, because sometimes it's confusing when it gets cut off midway. Let all the others know that we're back in action. Ugh. Well, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to have to fast forward because I don't want to teach all this stuff twice. I was like about halfway through my teaching there. But at least I know where I'm going now. So here's the thing. God is telling the future before it happens. He's already telling him that he's going to kill the firstborn son. So we talked a little bit about that yesterday, how God is already saying this is how it's going to go down. This is what I'm going to do. And here we have the first mention in verse 21, I will harden Pharaoh's heart. And so it'll be a little bit of repeat for some of you. And if you're watching this for the first time, grab a pen. This is worth writing down. 2 little chains we get to follow. So I will harden his heart. Our word there is chazak. It means to cure or to harden, like when you pour concrete. It starts off soft, but it grows harder. And so it's a growing hardening, but it's also a natural process that kind of goes through. And so God is saying what he's going to do. Now in chapter 7, so we're going to jump through the book of Exodus, actually, like all the way to the end pretty much. Well, maybe not to the end, but all the way to the end of Pharaoh, that is. And we're going to see how this process takes place, because people sometimes wonder and are confused about why did God harden Pharaoh's heart? What was the point in all this? Well, so he says he's going to do it in chapter 4, verse 21. It's the first mention. And in chapter 7, verse 3, he uses another word and he says, I will harden Pharaoh's heart. But this word, it's kasha, and it means to make stubborn. I'm going to make him stubborn. So this is still God saying what I will do. It's something coming in the future. Hang on to that thought. Now, we're jumping. Hope you got your Bibles. Chapter 7, verse 13. Pharaoh's heart grew hard. And we have a third word here. That's hazak. So there is that growing hard. It's starting to grow hard. And then in verse 14, the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hard. Now that word is kabod, and that is hard. And that is a causative action. This, when you actually move over to like the verb of this, it's like it was made hard. An action was done to make something hard. And look who does it. It's Pharaoh who does it in verse 13. In verse 22, 7:22, Pharaoh's heart grew hard. Chazak, again, it's that growing hard. Now notice, it's Pharaoh doing it. Now in chapter 8, verse 15, the Pharaoh saw there was relief. He hardened his heart. So again, Pharaoh's doing this hardening of his heart. And in verse 19, 8:19, Pharaoh's heart grew hard. Chazak again. In verse 32, but Pharaoh hardened his heart. And then in chapter 9, verse 7, the heart of Pharaoh became hard. Kabod. And so this is that firming up. Now, this is literally 7 times it's mentioned. 6 of which it's Pharaoh is doing it. 1 of which God is just stating that I'm seeing that Pharaoh's heart is hard. So we see again, 7:13, 14, 22, 15, 19, or sorry, that was 8. Sorry, yeah. 7, 13, 14, 22, 8, 15, 8, 19, 8, 32, 9, 7, and now finally in chapter 9, verse 12, but the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh. Chazak, that word of continuing the process of making hard. Now, there's God does it once. Now you see in chapter 9, verses 34 and 5, the last two, he hardened his heart and his servants. And then we see again, so the heart of Pharaoh was hardened. So chapter 10, God now says, so this is the fourth mention of God. And he says, I have hardened his heart. And so God warned about it twice, did it once, and now he's saying, no, yeah, I've hardened his heart. Chapter 10, verse 20, the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. Verse 27, but the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. Chapter 11, verse 10, and the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. And so all the way up to the Passover, and it actually does go on from there. Chapter 14, verse 4, he reminded them, that I will harden Pharaoh's heart. And then verse 8, the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. Chapter 14, verse 17, and I indeed will harden the hearts of the Egyptians. So it's something that we saw continuing on, but the main thing is that God did not take a gentle, loving, and permissive Pharaoh and then all of a sudden decide to make his heart hard. God took a Pharaoh who hardened his own heart, hardened his own heart, hardened his own heart, let his heart grow hard. And it is just worth noting that we see 7 mentions, and biblically that's 7. That's a number of completion. That's a number of fulfillment. We see that in the Bible a lot, that significance of the number 7. We see 7 times the mention of Pharaoh's own heart being and becoming in and of its own accord hard before God steps in and says, essentially, you have chosen a path, and now I'm going to push you along down that path. You see, I don't think Pharaoh is an example where God decides to make this man be hardened in heart from birth, and that Pharaoh was destined forever because God was going to make him hard. And I think God in his foreknowledge knew exactly what Pharaoh was going to do. And when Pharaoh had made up his mind of how he wanted to live, God says, okay, and now I'm going to use you as my tool of righteousness. You have chosen to have a hard heart. You have chosen to harden it again and again and again. Well, I can use a guy like you. You might not like it, but I've got a use for you. And God continues to just shove him down that path that he's already chosen on his own and uses him for his glory and to accomplish his will. Because it was of his hardened heart that things grew to the extremity, to the point where they finally let the Israelites go and take all the gold and the silver and all that stuff along with it. And so I think we need to remember that God, he does know the end from the beginning. And he knows how to use people according to what those people were already intending to do. You want to love me? Well, I can use that. And I'll set you up then to be used in great ways for me and my kingdom. You want to hate me? I can use that too. It's just worth noting, without Hitler and the Holocaust, the Jews might not have gotten back Israel the way that they have it today. God can see a wicked person with wicked intents and yet work it out for his glory. He can have his will accomplished through these things. Does that mean that God picked Hitler and decided, I'm going to make this guy murder off all my people, or 1/3 of my people at least? No, I don't think God laid the Holocaust on the heart of Hitler. But God knew the Holocaust was coming. And I'm sure he knew how to influence the way things play out for his glory and for his good. And so, as we see this, that first mention of God saying he's going to harden the heart of Pharaoh, I thought it was worth at least going back and looking and seeing how this thing plays out from beginning to end. So there's all those verses for you guys. All right. I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow, hopefully in one live stream that doesn't break off in the middle. I will see you guys then. Happy birthday, honey. It's my wife's birthday. She turns 29. See you guys.